All right. Howdy, everyone. How are you doing today? I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. And I, for one, am pretty thrilled by today's live stream. It's going to be a good one. I was in the warm-up together with Holly and Kelsey, and they've got great stories for you. But for those who joined us the previous times, they already know that we've been pretty deep into pitching and everything related to it. We started a big survey on contact management. We dove deep into the pitching topic itself with Dimitri from Just Reach Out last time. And this came all together in our pitching guide. It's a PDF you can download, and Kate, if you have the link with you, it would be great if you can share that in the chat. So if you haven't downloaded that guide, do so. We've got some great reactions to it, but we're not stopping here, right? And this is all what the next roundtable, this one today, is all about. We just don't want to kind of leave the guide out there and leave it be. No, we wanted to get feedback from the people who are on the other end of our pitches, writers, journalists, and influencers. And that's why today we've invited two great writers to our live stream, Kelsey and Holly. Both have different backgrounds from different industries, but both have tons of experience with receiving pitches from PR folks. So strap yourself in for a great session. Welcome on the stream, Kelsey and Holly. How are you both doing?
Thank you, really good, thank you.
Yeah, great. But before we dive in and I start asking you questions, I want to let you know and everyone know, and that's something kind of a tradition that we do, is to make sure that everyone knows how to use the chat. So to make sure that everyone does, please open up that chat window and answer two questions for us. The first question is, where are you joining from? And the second question, that's something about our guests. They have something in common, Kelsey and Holly. Namely, they're really into pets. But can you guess, are they a cat person or a dog person? So type cat if you think they're a cat person, type dog if you think they're a dog person, and then they can share what actually is there. So let's see, Minneapolis cat, Dublin dog, Germany cat, oh, bird, that was not an option. New York dog, from Amsterdam, oh, cat. There's lots of cats, lots of dogs as well, right? So bird. So maybe Kelsey, you can say, what are you into? What's your pet?
I'm definitely a cat person.
And Holly?
Yes, I also like cats. I have two. I'm getting another one this weekend, and I also have birds, but I keep them apart, obviously.
Yeah, of course, of course. Great. So thanks for joining us, first of all. It's great to have you. And of course, both of you are writers, but in a completely different segment. But Kelsey, maybe you can answer this first. How do you ended up being where you're currently at?
Sure. So I've been a freelance writer with my own business about 3.5 years now. But I first got my career started about 11 years ago working for a business publication. Then I moved into being an editor for a lifestyle magazine. And then I really got into writing about travel when I began working as an editor for a meetings and events focused magazine. And when I first started there, I really had no idea about that industry. I went on my very first press trip in 2013 and kind of got exposed to the whole world of travel writing and have kind of evolved into focusing pretty much on travel. I've pivoted a little bit during the pandemic to focus on food and health as well. But travel is kind of my bread and butter.
Cool. And Holly, you're of course directly into tech, right? So
That's right.
How did you ended up being a tech writer?
I've always been a giant nerd, which I guess you can blame on my parents. But I used to work in advertising first. I went to university for English language and linguistics, and then I went into copywriting in advertising agencies. So I was writing sort of on behalf of the companies. So I used to write as Apple and BlackBerry and Epson and all sorts of techie brands. And I was working in very cool companies where everybody was very, very trendy, I guess. And I was the only sort of nerdy one. So whenever there was a techie project, I'd be like, please, can I do it? And everyone else was like, yeah, we don't want it anyway. So I worked on a couple of Apple iPhone launches and stuff back when smartphones were just getting going, because I'm that old. And I was doing that for a while and I really enjoyed it. But obviously, if you're writing as the brand, you can't be as honest necessarily as you want to be. So I made the switch into journalism. So I moved across to a women's tech website called Shiny, where I was editor for a while. Then I launched my own site, which was, we raised 6 figures in funding. It was called Gadgets, and we hired a ton of really cool female journalists and did that for a while. And now I freelance, so I write all over the place. I have a page in the Evening Standard, which is currently on hold because of the virus. And I do news shifts for Gizmodo UK, and I write for TechRadar and The Guardian and BBC and just lots and lots of places. Yeah, all kinds of stuff, but mainly consumer tech.
Cool. And just on that, like, because you're writing for those kind of big publications and Kelsey as well. But Holly, what's been your experience with PR or PR people for that matter? Of course, you came from an advertising age, so you've been kind of on that side a little bit. But yeah, advertising is, of course, still different than PR. But what's your experience these days with PR or PR people?
It's really varied, actually. There's a kind of a mix of people in my inbox, where it's a mix of people who've done lots of research and kind of are specifically pitching something to me or to the publication. Lots of people that are just pitching to everybody, which is fine. And some people who I think you can tell they didn't really want to email me. They've sort of gone away and Googled me and gone, all right, well, I'm gonna stick a cat picture in here, and it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about, but let's do that because that's what you like, or they're pitching me because I'm female and it's like a phone aimed at women, and some of that as well. But I do understand, obviously, from having been on that side, that there's pressure from higher ups and stuff, and it's not always people's fault if they're kind of spamming you.
Of course. But you said, like, in the beginning, you said, like, they email everything and that's fine. Why do you think that's fine?
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of publications out there. There's a lot of bloggers out there, especially with my news shifts for Gizmodo UK. We literally are just on shift for a few hours and just seeing what comes in and what's new. And I don't expect people to kind of do a personalized pitch. If they spent time doing that, to be honest, they'd probably miss the time when I was on shift anyway. So if you're just firing stuff out, then it's up to me to kind of pick up whether it's relevant or not. A lot of the stuff we write about, especially Gizmodo UK, because it covers a lot of just UK news as well. It's not necessarily tech, so it's kind of random stuff. We did something quite recently that did surprisingly well, was about a sauce flavored ice cream. Heinz have made this range of like salad cream and ketchup
flavored ice cream.
Really disgusting. And for some reason, the news release for that did so well that then we ended up doing a follow up, and I got to review them all, and they were absolutely horrible, and I will never recover.
Okay, that's clear. So, Kelsey, that question to you, like, what's your experience with PR and PR people? I know that you've kind of working with them in as a freelancer sometimes as well, but from a writer's perspective, how have you been kind of working with them?
Sure. I mean, I honestly think that PR people are like my colleagues. I mean, I run my own business. I work, pretty much by myself all day long, and I feel like a lot of PR people are the people that I, rely on. I bounce ideas off of them. I've come to rely more on PR during the last few months when I'm not able to travel as much or really at all, or learning what's new in different destinations. It all comes down to, people sending me that information through email and helping to formulate story ideas in that way. So for me, I mean, I'm all about the relationship-based pitching. So I'm a little different in that I don't really cover news. I'm, as a freelancer for travel publications like Wall Street Journal, Condé Nast Traveler, places like that, my livelihood really comes from the original ideas, trends that I can pick up on, or, things that people are doing in different locations. And it's really, news is not always like something that I'm going to pick up on. In travel, they have staff writers and staff editors who are basically covering the straight press releases or something that's opening or things like that. So for me, to receive that kind of information is not very helpful, because I'm wanting people to get to know me, get to know what I write about, and then help me to pitch unusual ideas or these trend story ideas, or like Wall Street Journal likes really like quirky lifestyle takes on travel and those kind of topics. So to me, I'm looking for people to like work on those relationships with me and figure out how we can work together on those kinds of stories, to pay attention to what I've written in the past and maybe suggest ideas based on that.
And do you find lots of PR professionals that are willing to invest in that? Because of course it takes a lot of time from them as well, or are they just just a handful of people that are actually kind of like making that investment?
I think it's growing. I would say right now it's a very small percentage, maybe 10% of the pitches that I get. I think it's becoming like, something. I run some training and have a blog about working on relationships with freelance writers and PR, and like better understanding what each side does so that, each can benefit and learn more from each other to get, ultimately what we want, which is writers want to get stories approved by editors and publicists want their clients and stories, right? So I think that, it does take some time investment to put in the hours and, take time to research a writer and like really learn what they're doing and talk with them. But I will say that the people who have taken the time to do that, they're my go-to people. And that has a lot of benefits for them because, for example, there's one travel agency in New York that I've probably met about every single person on their team in person at some point or another on trips. They go out of their way to, support my stories. They'll send me a note and say, hey, I love this article. They're not, every email isn't always a pitch. And I think that's important because that kind of sound tedious, but it's important in like developing that relationship because when I do get a pitch from them, I know that I'm going to open it and read it and respond because they're not going to be sending me just like blast of things that might not be relevant to me. And I really appreciate that as a writer.
And Holly, do you feel that you have the similar types of people that you work with? Because of course you're having different kind of view and different types of industry and different types of news to more longer term. But you feel that can you kind of understand that where Kelsey is coming from with this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends on what kind of article I'm writing. So some of the longer form stuff I do about tech, but it takes a bit longer. If you're going to be working on something for a few weeks, then it's much more important to obviously have relationships with the companies that you're writing about. And there's definitely some companies that sort of places that sell lots of tech. Like there's a department in Selfridges that does lots of really interesting new tech. And I know I can always rely on them if I've got a space, like for example, if a product has fallen out of a roundup that I'm doing and I can't feature it for whatever reason, and I've got a space and, we're about to go to print, then I know there's people I can rely on. I'll say, you have something for this, and they will have something, and they know exactly what kinds of things that I'm looking for, and they know to send over the right kinds of images, and that kind of stuff really helps, especially for print, because with the Evening Standard in particular, because we do these print page roundups, they like it to look really colorful and really bright, obviously, because you want people to see it when they're opening the newspaper and to read through it. And obviously in tech, a lot of stuff is black, a lot of stuff is silver, a lot of stuff is white. So there's not that much color. And so the people that I work with a lot have understood that if something comes in several colors, they'll mention that and they'll make sure that I have the image where it is. And they'll also know that the Evening Standard tends to do cutouts rather than lifestyle images. So they'll make sure I've got those ready. And that's always really, really helpful for me.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And do you feel that it evolved across the years? Have you seen something different in how you've been pitching, being pitched like today versus like 5 years ago, Holly?
I think I get more approaches through social media now than I used to. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't know if that's controversial. But it kind of bugs me when people message me on LinkedIn. I never check my LinkedIn messages ever because it's just fantastic. There's so much rubbish in there. Pyramid scheme invites, all sorts of nonsense. So I don't even look. And Twitter DMs as well. I have my DMs open because it helps for people to be able to message me about stuff. And I more leave that open for people who, for example, have a lead on a story that they can't talk about publicly. So it'll be more like members of the public rather than PR. And I have my email address right there in my bio, so it kind of bothers me when people use DMs because you can't search them by content. You can only search by name, and it stuff just gets lost in there.
And is this just for you, or is this just your preference, or you feel that this is with your peers as well, that they'd rather have it through email?
It's really controversial. It's one of those things where some people have a really set preference and some people really don't. So I know people who don't mind being pitched across Twitter, although I would say I think the majority of journalists that I know prefer not to, and some of them have in their bios like, don't pitch me on Twitter. Like, if your email address is there, they can just email. I don't mind, like, if somebody wants to tweet me or DM me and follow up and say I've sent you this and I haven't heard back or anything, but it kind of bothers me when it comes through DM in the first place, I think. That's my personal account,
but that's really interesting. Kelsey, what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I sort of feel the opposite way just about what I do. I get so many emails. Like, I bet I get like 1,200 to 1,500 emails a week. And so it's really easy for me to miss pitches, even if they are, if it's from a name I don't recognize. If you're trying to pitch me for the first time, I really don't mind if you send me like a Twitter DM, or even like follow me on Instagram and send me a DM there.
Wow, really?
Say, hey, I see you're into, I had someone do this. I see you're really into coffee. Like, I represent a coffee shop. If you're ever interested, let me know. And I could say, hey, yeah, I actually am working on a story about coffee shops. You want to send me an email? So like, to sort of like make that initial impression when my inbox is a hot mess pretty much all the time. I think that can help you stand out. And I'm also like, as a journalist, like, I'm sorry, Holly, I have an opposite opinion on LinkedIn. Like, I use LinkedIn like very regularly. Like, I'm on there all the time, and
Sure.
it's really helpful to connect with people there, because I'm like sharing my articles, and I think it's a good way for me at least to share what I'm working on and like what I'm doing, and people can see that there. Because one thing that really bugs me is when I'll get like a generic email saying, oh, can you please tell me what you're working on? It's like, journalists are working on like 15 stories at a time. Like, I'm never going to take the time and say, oh, I'm working on this story, this story, this story, especially when you don't even tell me like who your clients are. I mean, that is not something I'm ever going to respond to, because it's just overwhelming. And also, like, I don't know how you can help me if you haven't even told me.
Absolutely.
So we do get a lot. I mean, Holly, maybe you can speak to this too, but I get a lot of emails constantly asking what I'm working on. It's like, follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, look at my blog, look at my blog. Like, there's a million ways to figure out what I'm doing.
Especially with online stuff as well. So I get emails asking like, what are you working on right now for Gizmodo? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know yet. Like, I will be working on Gizmodo from 9 o'clock until 1 o'clock tomorrow, and at that point, I will find out what I'm writing about. Before then, especially with online stuff, you get people kind of emailing going, oh, can you it'll be like July, and they'll go, can you tell me about your Christmas gift guide? What kinds of things are you looking to feature? And I'm like, this is an online publication. We will start our Christmas gift guide in December. Like, I get that for print it's much longer, but even so, I mean, 6 months ahead, it's not. I have nothing to say. I have no clue yet.
Yeah, that's interesting, and at the same time, like a little bit kind of confusing, because some journalists clearly like to be pitched through social and others don't, right? But Holly, you made it really clear, because on your Twitter you have a pinned tweet, and also in your bio you say how to approach you. But maybe Kelsey, like should people then just guess to see or try? Like, that's kind of, I think, something that like the PR people that maybe are joining, but you do make it difficult for us to approach you if we really don't know. Like how should they kind of figure this out? And Kelsey, you have any tips on that?
Well, that's a great idea, Holly, to have a pinned tweet about how to pitch you. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm gonna copy that idea. I mean, I think the best way to do it is, it just depends on like where we are, like if we know each other or not. I think for a cold pitch, if you want to start, I think it's great to start following me on social media to like get to know what I'm doing and like what I'm all about, because every writer is like has a very personal way of doing this. Like, we're different than editors in that we're not all always writing in the same voice, because a lot of us are writing for 20 different publications. So we are always having, that's the way we write. So like we have like our own style, like our own brand, and like you sort of have to get to know us rather than just getting to know like a publication we write for isn't the same as getting to know us, I think. So to me, I'm just like really about like the relationship part of it. But as far as like actually how to pitch me, the key things that I see need to be in every single pitch are, what audience are you trying to reach with this? Like, who of my audiences or publications are you trying to pitch? Like, I love pitches that have like, I think this would be a great idea for this, and this publication. Second, there needs to be a timely hook. Just because something exists doesn't mean it's a story. Like, why is it worth covering now? Or, are you pitching this for this week for a digital publication? Are you pitching this for 6 months from now, which is like AARP is a print publication I work for. I have to pitch them 6 months in advance for their print issue. And then also, like, what is the actual idea? Like, just telling me about like a company or a person or a thing is not a story idea. That's like a news story that like a publication and editor might write, but like that's not something that I'm looking for as like a freelance feature writer. Like, I want to know like what is a unique take on it. And you know, as freelance writers, like our ideas are our livelihood. Like that's what gets us money because we have to pitch these creative ideas that editors aren't thinking of. And so when publicists like understand that mindset and like want to collaborate, that's the people that I love working with, because it's not about you just like sending me a press release on your client and saying, oh, can you cover this in the Wall Street Journal? Like that's never going to happen. You know, it's like, are you willing to work with me on like coming up with a unique angle about how this could be cool, you know?
Yeah, that's
It's
interesting
interesting.
because,
Sorry, it's
go ahead.
interesting that you said that about you like when they tell you which audience they're going for and which publication, because I am the complete opposite. I actually hate it. I hate it when PRs say, I'm sending you this story for the Evening Standard, I'm sending you this story for Gizmodo. I'm like, I will decide which of my audiences, which of my publications this suits. And I don't know, it feels slightly snobbish to me because they'll always obviously pick the biggest ones that you write for. And sometimes I'm like, well, I'm not going to write about it in the Evening Standard, but I might write about it for someone else. But if you come to me and say, like, I'm only interested in the biggest publications you write for, then I'm kind of like, well, that's not really up to you. And it also bugs me just on a personal level when they say things like, your readers will love this. I'm like, again, I know what my readers will love, and I don't need to tell them.
It seems that you really hate the selling part of the pitch, right? That's kind of like that they really try to kind of sell it to you versus actually just sharing what they have to share, right?
Literally that. I mean, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference to me, the kind of the message that goes with the pitch, I guess, because it's a case of it's either a story that's good for the places that I write for, or it isn't. You know, I can't make a story fit a publication just because the pitch is really good. No. You know, if it's something like, for example, Gizmodo UK, I got a pitch this morning from one of my oldest friends, and it was all very US based, and he wanted me to write about it for Gizmodo, and I had to say, well, look, this is Gizmodo UK, we don't cover US news. You know, it's just, there's nothing you can say to me that will make this relevant for the site unless there's a UK angle. So it wasn't so much about the pitch as the information. There's not much I can do if it's just the wrong topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you both mentioned that that they know what you're working on, what you think is interesting is kind of key. And we did some research kind of a few months ago where we did a questionnaire to PR people, and it kind of like surprised us and maybe as you, that only 2 out of 5 use LinkedIn regularly for their research, and just 1 out of 5 uses Twitter. Like, does that surprise you, Kelsey?
Yeah, because I mean, these days, if you don't have a social media profile, you basically don't exist, right? So, I mean, when I go to look up a company, the first thing I often do is look up their Instagram rather than their website, because I want to see what their visuals are, because that matters for stories, you know? And so to me, like if you go and see a journalist isn't active on like any of those social platforms, it's sort of a little bit of a red flag to me, because I mean, we have to use social, at least in my world, like you know, for Wall Street Journal, for example, I'm charged with finding a lot of those like personalized leads, you know, like sharing a very specific example of something that someone did that fits in with my trend. Like I go to social media all the time to try to find people like that, because that's one of the tools in my toolbox as a writer. And so, you know, if you're like haven't looked at any of those platforms for people and you're saying like something might be a fit for them, you may just be like really off base, because that's a really easy way to figure out like what's someone's voice, like what kind of publications are they working on, what kind of things do they put out here, you know. And it doesn't take that long. I mean, you can look up everyone's social profile usually from their website in like 10 minutes. So it almost comes across lazy to me if someone hasn't taken the time to at least like research you for 10 minutes before trying to send you like a personalized pitch.
Yeah, I think it's true. And but Holly, for you as well, you're very active on Twitter, I see, and there's kind of a mixture, and that's great. Sorry, no. And it's of course a mixture of of your personality, right? It's not just kind of your professionalized, everything is there. Isn't it sometimes kind of creepy that someone kind of comes up with, like, uses that as an angle which is totally irrelevant to the story that they're kind of bringing?
I don't know that I'd say it's creepy. I think sometimes it's kind of cringy if it's really, really, really not relevant, and you know they're just trying to be like, you know, I'm going to pitch you a camping stove. Why do I get pitches for camping stoves? It's honestly so many. I don't know why, but yeah, it's a bit weird if they're like, okay, I understand that you do tech, and I saw your tweet about your grandma's middle name, and and here's a camping stove. I'm kind of like, yeah, that doesn't really work. But I don't mind if it comes across quite human, like as something that you might say if I met them, you know, at an event or something. If it's the sort of thing that says, "Oh, I saw your tweet the other day about, you know, that article you liked, and I like that too," and that's kind of fine. If it feels human, it's okay. But I don't like to feel like I'm being sort of socially engineered, like, you know, sort of take thing that person likes, add to email, like, you know, dear name kind of thing. I'm not thinking on that.
Yeah. So like with it's all about the balance, right? Like just try to be human when you're kind of pitch. Try to be kind of come across as genuine. If it doesn't use genuine, don't hook it in without any reason. That's kind of like if it makes sense to kind of bring it up that you've been working on this and this, you do. Otherwise, like don't go there, right?
Exactly.
So, but I think you both, if I'm correct, you both kind of understand that think and value the fact that they invested something in the pitch, right? That they basically like looked up where you're kind of working on, which kind of companies you're working for and writing for. So that is of course like something that is a good lesson, I guess. Kelsey, as well as being kind of a content on the content creation side of things, you also coach publicists at Better Pitching. Why do you felt that was necessary, and what's kind of the biggest mistake you see that people make?
I mean, I kind of launched this last year. I started this little blog about, you know, how freelance writers work, and it just kind of turned into people having so many questions about, you know, like, well, you know, what happens? Like, why didn't you include my story in a pitch? Or like, why do you ask for everything last minute? Or, you know, why did you not include this in the story? Like I started getting like so many questions from that. And I wanted to sort of use that blog as like a way to like explain why and how freelancers work the way we do, because I think it's just really important to understanding like each side better. Like if we both understand like how each other works, then we can better like provide what each other needs and help each other. And, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So like the more we know, the better it is. I think that one of the biggest mistakes that I see from PR is that just sort of like their expectations around how long stories take. And this might be completely different than the type of writing Holly does. But for me, I mean, like you can introduce yourself to me and tell me about a client, and I might have the perfect fit for you 2 weeks from now, or it might be 2 years from now. But for the most part, I really don't, unless pitches are really bad or emails are really bad, I really don't delete them. I just archive or file everything. So like say, you know, for example, I got a lot of pitches on gardening. Well, up until this year, I really never wrote about gardening, but I just had archived them. Well, then that came the whole concept of like the victory gardens, right? And so I actually ended up writing a couple pieces about gardening this spring in quarantine. And I like literally searched gardening in my inbox and like found all these great sources that people had pitched me. And they were like so surprised I reached out like a year later, but sometimes that's what happened, you know?
Yeah, I do exactly the same thing. I never delete anything. I have a huge database of emails from like not even just my current positions and my current email addresses, but like every job I've ever had. Like I copy the whole database across because you never know when it's going to be useful. You know, sometimes you just need a quote from somebody and you can just search your inbox and find a good person, and it can be much quicker. But that brings me on to a point of something that really bugs me about pitches. I really don't like it when people include the images in a WeTransfer link or something like that, because those expire. And so if I'm coming back to something weeks later and often, or months later even, and I haven't got time to, you know, go choosing the PR and getting the image sent specifically to me, and there isn't a site with all the images on. I hate when there aren't sites with images on. But if you've sent me a WeTransfer link and it's expired, if I've only got an hour to write this piece, I'm going to pick something that I've got images for, and then you lose out on the coverage. And I would so much rather get images in. I mean, I don't massively want them attached to the email because it's just going to fill my inbox up. I personally prefer like a Dropbox or a Google Drive link or something like that, so that in 6 months' time, presumably, as long as you haven't deleted them, they're still there, and I can just grab them when I need them and go.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense. So I think it's pretty crucial there for like the audience as well, that you clearly use your mailbox as one of the prime research tools that you have. So what you put in a pitch, in the email itself needs to be searchable, so you guys can kind of quickly find those things back. It needs to be easy to copy paste, like all those practical stuffs. And as I hear you guys speak, there's still a lot of people making mistakes towards that, which are simple fixes, right? So that's interesting.
Just making sure we've got all the information in that one place can really make the difference, for me at least, as to whether your product gets covered or not. Because if I have the information there and I don't have to call you up trying to get hold of it, then you're much more likely to get included in whatever it is that I'm doing. And if it's between, client A and client B, and one's given me, all the names and the quotes and all the stuff that I need in one place, and one hasn't, I'm not going to have the time to go chasing client B. So that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, Kelsey, you're in travel and of course, like heavily reliant on those images as well. Can you share that Holly's frustration there with WeTransfer links?
Yes, and I absolutely loathe email attachments. People try to send, I think the worst phrase anyone could ever say is, I'm going to send a bunch of emails because the files are so big. And then I get 20 emails with one photo each. That is I don't understand. That blows my mind. I was like, there is something called Dropbox. It is a great tool, and please use it. I prefer Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, and just make sure we have access to it. There's still times I get links that is you have to request access to this, and it's it's
I know.
When you have to have 10 emails back and forth about just getting images, it's so frustrating. I really like it when people do things that respect our time and just say, here's everything you need. Let me know what else I can provide, rather than making it this constant exchange, because no one has time to email back and forth about one image for, all morning. So
absolutely. And by the same token, those websites, some clients have sites where you can go on and kind of find all the images and videos and B-roll and that kind of thing. Those are great, except for the ones that expect you to register ahead of time and get approved by somebody. It's crazy. I don't know how the system works, but for Nintendo, for example, I cannot get approved on their online thing. I don't know what I have to say. I don't know what I'm filling in wrong, but I cannot get approved. But they will send me their products. They'll send physical products, but I can't have pictures of them. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and it's to be honest, we build software for PR people, right? So we do get questions a lot from PR people. Can we password protect this? And we're always no, we don't, because the problem is we then went ahead and did some research with journalists, and they say, no way I'm gonna reset my password if you want me to look up some things. I can't remember. So that's why we kind of never ever went to it. There are easy ways to do it, secret links and stuff. And even if it's really so secure, why the hell are you sharing it then? So in essence, I'm fully on board on that one. Kelsey, can you tell me about something like a terrible pitch that you've received, or maybe not, and that's still wound up kind of covering the story? Do you have something that comes to mind there?
I hate to say terrible, because everybody's doing their best.
Of course.
Now. There are a lot of pitches I receive, kind of back to the archive thing, where they might pitch me a profile on a founder of a company. Here's a good example. I write a lot for Fast Company, and people love the name Fast Company, and so they try to pitch me profiles on businesses thinking that that's what I'm writing. But I actually write service-based pieces for their work life section. So I never do business profiles of people. So I'll get a pitch that is 500 words long about this one person in their company, about how they pivoted during quarantine. That's literally useless to me. However, if I archive that and you have some good keywords in there, for example, I think I did a piece, I think this happened in a piece I did recently. It was about how companies are evolving their corporate kitchens, and what's happening to coffee makers and things like that. Well, there was a company that they had some keyword in their email. It was a terrible pitch to begin with, but I actually ended up reaching out and saying, actually, can I interview someone that oversees, your F&B perks for your company, because I think it would be a good fit for this story. And so it's just I had to keep that in there and wait, and then it ended up being a fit down the road. But the actual pitch of writing about the business itself as a story was never going to work.
And Holly, you have examples of terrible, or even the opposite, really good pitches, and why was it so good?
Yeah, I guess as a woman in tech, I get stuff that's for women in tech, or just women. So I get a lot of stuff that's really irrelevant to what I write about, but just because I happen to be female, I get sent that. So I get a lot of stuff related to being a mother, which I am not and have no interest in being. And I get lots of stuff, baby tech and that kind of thing. And it's just not really relevant. But what bothers me more is kind of when people go, okay, so she's a woman, right? So what we need to do is find the one woman in this tech company that we wanted to write about and be like, look, a woman. And I'm supposed to be like,
Oh my
oh
God.
my God, you guys, congratulations. Like, well done on having a person who is female, like, cool. And it's just embarrassing. And like, sometimes I honestly get ones that are like, okay, we want to pitch you a piece where you'll interview this guy about women in tech. And I'm like, okay, you want me to write about women at your company through this man? Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. But yeah, and I think we were just saying in the warm-up actually that one of the funniest ones I ever got, I think, was from a contraceptive app. It's one of those apps that kind of tracks your cycles and helps you work out when to get pregnant. And I mean, I don't blame them for not knowing that I'm sterilized, although if you Google me, it's like the first thing you get because it was a whole thing. But I'm famously sterilized. I am not interested in babies, but also even if I were, there is absolutely no possibility ever that I am going to put whether or not I get pregnant in the hands of your app. Like, I'm sorry, I would do a lot of things for my job, but that is not one of them.
No, absolutely. Yeah, but it's kind of weird, because from that perspective, they're so deep in that material that they think it's kind of the biggest and most important thing in the world, and that of course you should care, right? That assumption sometimes is kind of, but I think it's also like then the part of the PR person and PR professionals to say, listen, how can we make this a little bit more kind of understandable for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So at which stage, like to improve these kind of mistakes, right? At which stage can it sometimes help that they get in touch a little bit earlier, that there's some co-creation going on, or you guys don't have time for doing these things, Holly?
Me, I probably don't usually have time to kind of work with people and stuff. I do sometimes when I'm doing bigger, longer form features. And like, for example, I got a pitch recently from a food company which just wasn't relevant for the publication that they wanted it in. And I kind of went back and said, okay, do you have any alternate angles? And they actually went away and workshopped some really good stuff. And although still the editor there doesn't want to take it because it's just not their kind of story, I am now actively looking for somewhere else that I might be able to pitch that because I think it's interesting. And that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So I might end up with a commission that I wouldn't otherwise have got. So that's good when that happens. Yeah, but I mean, in terms of kind of coming to me when they're still developing the product and the story, I personally probably can't help with that.
Yeah, I think Kelsey, you're a little bit different there, right? You kind of want to have them contact you pretty early on, or not?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on whether I know them. If it's someone from a PR firm that I work with that, that we already know each other pretty well. If someone says like, hey, I have this new client, we're trying to figure out, if this would be a good fit for this publication of yours, like, what do you think? And like, if it's short and easy for me to think about an answer, I think if I look at an email and it's going to take me less than 5 minutes to respond, like, I'm more inclined to respond. If you send me an email that's like, here's 1,000 words and would you be interested in talking about a story? Like, that's just one of those that I like open it, click unread, and then like probably never going to go back to it. Cause I think that like shorter with running those kind of story ideas by me is better because it's like just something we can like quickly do, sort of like popcorn, But if it's something that it requires like a lot of in-depth thinking, like that's just not really something that I'm interested in doing most days and just don't have time for.
No, makes sense. And how important, you told me, Kelsey, that you got like about 1,000, 1,200 emails like a week. Like, how important is the from address and the subject line? Like how can you deal with these? Do you just kind of like, how do you make that initial selection? Because otherwise you need to make pretty big selection and be very rigorous into throwing stuff away to be able to keep it manageable, right?
Sure. Well, I mean, you definitely have to prioritize. I mean, editors' emails always come first to me. And then if I'm working on a story and I've asked, a publicist for questions or things like that, like those are my next priority. Like reviewing pitches is sort of always something I do when I have some spare time in the day rather than like as an active part of my workday. But for as far as like who it comes from, if I see a from field that is like, sent via something something company, or like a long link that's clearly not actually coming directly from their email, I honestly usually delete it. Like I'll skim it and then, or like archive it, because I know that those things like aren't going to be like the most pressing matters for me to deal with. And then subject line, like I think you really need to get in, like consider that, at least in the United States, like a lot of people are on Gmail for freelance writers. Like if your subject line doesn't fit on the initial screen, like if it gets cut off, that's not good. Like you need to put it in like 7 words. And I like it when people will just say, like, hey Kelsey, pitch for whatever, like, and just use, like in the journalism world, we call things slugs, and that's like a few words to describe what a story is about. Like just say pitch idea on the slug, like ways to do this, or like, something that like instantly gives me an idea of what it is. Like I hate subject lines that'll be like, hey, quick question for you. It's like, what is this about? Like I'm never, just be as specific as possible and concise as possible in your subject line. And, if there's any keywords in there, make sure to get those in. I mean, one thing that really irks me is if we've been corresponding about something and then you're like, well, I have you, I also want to pitch you on this idea and also invite you on a press trip. It's like, okay, if this is on a subject line about like recipes, like I'm never going to see that, or like know to open it. So don't, like, email chains that get beyond like 10 or 15 emails long are like unmanageable. So just start a new one and like put in a new subject line.
Yeah, interesting. Holly, you have any tips for people to kind of like cut through the clutter of your mailbox?
Hold on. Sorry, I was muted for a second there because there was a bird going crazy next to me.
No worries.
You do? Yes, I completely agree with everything Kelsey says. I think for the first time in this call, we're so helpful, haven't we? We're total opposite. But yeah, I think it's so important to get the keywords in there. Obviously, not something that's going to be dragging on forever and ever and ever. And ideally, if you could try and sort of sum up what the story is in the first few words, that really helps me a lot. If it's something that's completely not relevant to the publication I'm working on, then yeah, I'm going to just archive it. And if there's more stuff in there that might be more relevant later, I am probably going to miss that if it's not in the subject line. We can't read them all. We do get literally thousands of emails a week, and you just can't.
No. And then, and you probably also make a big selection on who's it from, right? If you already know the person, or not really?
Sometimes I mean, if I know somebody, I will usually open their email despite, even if the subject line is something that I would normally ignore. But that doesn't necessarily mean I wouldn't be able to run the story, because if I can't run it, I can't run it, and that doesn't mean that I won't open emails from names I don't know, because if the subject line looks good to me, or, I have any suspicion that I think it might be a good story, I will still open it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Like Kelsey, in the beginning, you talked also a little bit about like how important kind of having a relationship with like an agency that you trust and so on is before. How does that kind of like help you? How much more chance do they have pitching a story to you than someone random that you don't know, coming with the same story? Like how important is that relationship? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, because to me, it's all about having trust on both sides. And, I've had people pitch me stories that, sounded great. And then I get the story approved by an editor and go back to them, and they actually can't provide what they promised. They can't give me an interview with the person they asked for. They can't deliver anything on time. Like they're out of office the next 2 weeks and didn't tell me, or like anything like that. And so when you that sort of like then makes the writer look bad to their editor. And so it's like when you start working with people that you can trust them, and that they're going to come through on what they say, that they actually can get you what you need, like there just starts to become, like people want to work with people they like and that they know are going to deliver for them. And that goes both ways, I think. If I would imagine it'd be the same way if a publicist, thinks they're working with a writer on a story, and then that writer doesn't end up including them in this story, that kind of hurts the trust, and they might not want to work.
It's not always our fault, though.
Well, that's true.
Well, some places have been really grumpy with me because, you know, there was a big interview that I did with some people at Google that was really cool and I was so excited for it to run. And then for one reason or another, it didn't end up running that month and then it didn't run the next month. And they're kind of frantically emailing me and there's nothing I can do. It's completely out of my hands. So all I can really say is I'm sorry. And, you know, some places you can tell they're still kind of annoyed with you a few months later.
Yeah.
Something didn't run or it didn't end up getting included, and sometimes it just gets. Sometimes I didn't even know it hasn't been included. You know, I'll put the product in my story, and then when it goes to print, it's been taken out because there was an ad that had to fit in there or something. You know, it's not always anything I can do.
No, it's not always in your control either. Of course, no, it makes sense. Oh my God, yeah, I'm like, before we go to questions from the audience, like, so if you have a question, put it in the chat, and Kate will kind of make some selections for me, hopefully, so I can kind of, because I saw lots of questions already coming in from you. That means you both are doing a great job. But the last question that I had, and I want you to kind of answer was, and I've also sent it to you before, so you could kind of think about this a little bit. But if you had like the opportunity to stick a message on a huge billboard, and you could have all PR people in the world kind of see it, and what would you put on there? And let's start with Holly.
Images on Dropbox. That's it. That would make my life 1,000 times easier in 1 second. That would be so great. But a second to that, I think, would be please pick up your products. Because at least in tech, it's probably not the same for you, Kelsey, but we get tons of stuff sent out. You know, I have to try phones and gadgets and printers and all sorts, and my house just becomes a storage facility. And like genuinely chasing all these companies, be like, please send your products back. I am drowning in tech. And like, because it's not technically mine, like I can't donate it to charity or anything. So it just,
you can't sell it,
so
right?
much stuff. No. No, and yeah, literally, some stuff I've got that I've had for years, and I it just lives in my wardrobe now.
Okay, cool. Kelsey, what would you put on the billboard?
I would say quality over quantity. And you know, for me, it really comes down to relationships. I don't care about being on your press release distribution list. You know, I care about us working together and being both storytellers. You know, it's not like you pitching me your client and me figuring out the story. Like, I think it's about both sides learning how to be storytellers together.
And that's great. Thank you already. And based on that, I'd like a follow-up question from someone from the audience here. Let me check from Betsy. What's your feeling on receiving releases through distribution services like Cision, Kelsey? Because it's US based, you're mainly probably on their list somewhere. Like, do you ever look at those?
The only time I use them is I do write some news pieces for an industry trade publication, and we will use those hard news like press releases, but I mean 90% of the time they're useless to me unless they're for that specifically.
Amen to that. I fully agree. Let's move on. Question from Jason. I agree with Kelsey that we should always understand the writer and pitch angles the writer is keen on. Question, is there not a one-size-fits-all approach, and hence we have to customize the pitch differently to different writers? So instead of just sending one press release that's the same for everyone, does everyone need a personalized press release, Kelsey?
I just don't really want press releases in general. Like, I just want, you know, I'd love if you emailed me and say, hey, I have a client that is opening this really cool hotel with this and this that I think you'd enjoy. Do you want more info on it? And then I either say yes or no.
Okay. Cool, makes a lot of sense. Well, a question from Kiara for Holly. How long should a pitch be? Do you read past one paragraph? She's not thinking very highly of.
No, there's no like set limit. I mean, if I end up writing a piece about it, I will be super grateful for the rest of the information in the email. You know, so if I'm deciding what I'm going to write about, then yeah, I'll look at the subject line and just kind of scan the email and get an idea. But when I actually come back to it, I will be pouring through and looking for those details. So it does actually genuinely help me to have kind of a little summary and then just kind of whack the rest of the information on it. As long as it's text, obviously don't be sending me like big PDFs and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also here a question from Laura, which is a little bit on the same topic. If you receive a pitch, do you prefer bullet points with images or just one or two lines email or like a Twitter note? Any specific keywords that would catch your attention in the subject line for a pitch? Like this is of course all magic tricks.
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't like catch-all rules for everything, I guess. But for me, I think some bullet points with a longer kind of explanation below is definitely helpful. Links to images definitely helpful. Twitter, personally, like I said, I don't really want to get stuff through there because I mean it doesn't help them either, because if I'm looking for something, as we were saying, if I'm looking for something to write about much later, I can't even search just the DMs. Like this,
No.
It's not a service they offer. It's annoying.
No, okay, makes a lot of sense. A question, another question here, maybe for you, Kelsey. Is there any bias towards or against PR agencies versus the communication people of the brand itself? Do you like rather have the people from the brand contact you directly, or you're fine with agency people contacting you?
No, I mean, I'm fine with either one, but honestly, the brand people rarely reach out. I mean, it seems like they, like, especially in the travel space, like it seems like it's usually the agencies that are reaching out on behalf of the brand. But so it's more like if I do reach out to a team, it's like they're responding to my inquiry if they're a communications team rather than actually pitching me. But I mean, I would personally like to get to know more of these communication teams. I mean, I'm always fine with someone just reaching out and saying, hey, you know, I'm head of communications for, you know, Langham Hotels. Like if you ever need anything, just want to be a resource for you. Like I'd be fine with receiving more of those. That's pretty rare though for freelancers to get, I think, in my field.
But I think that's an opportunity, right, for them. Holly, you have any bias towards an agency contact you versus the people? No?
No, that would be really unproductive. Agency people, you know, they've often worked on a client for a really long time, and they know the kinds of things that the client's looking for, and they can often be a really useful kind of middle ground between what the journalist wants and what the client wants, I think, because sometimes it's difficult for me to say, look, in the nicest possible way, I get that your CEO's comments on this issue are really interesting, but no one else will. You know, we need to think of something else. And a PR agency obviously can kind of act as a middleman and soften that a little bit. So actually, I think they're really useful. Although it is in tech, you do usually get to know the people in the company as well, even just at the kind of parties and the and the conferences and such like. Although less during pandemics, obviously.
Yeah, of course. And just also for you, Holly, I think it applies a little bit more to you. What do you think about, instead of pitching you through email, getting you on the phone and pitching you orally? What do you feel about that?
Please don't ever call me, ever. I know I'm like super millennial saying that, but I cannot stand phone calls because it interrupts your time and your concentration. And I am very much of the generation that phone calls are for emergencies. Like if something is on fire, you can ring me. Otherwise, text message, email, much better, and I can get to it when I need to. What really, really bothers me is when I've got a company sending me a sample, for example, and I have to give them my phone number for the courier, and they then use that phone number to pitch me stuff. That really bugs me because I'm like, that's not why I gave you the number, and it just feels a bit. And you know, they'll sometimes call you at 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
Oh my God.
No.
All right. Kelsey, you think the same about phone pitches?
Yeah, I never ever want to get a phone pitch. I mean, I have in the beginning. I used to have my number in my email signature in case something came up, but I started getting so many spammy calls and just calling me out of the blue when I'm trying to work. It's like, send me an email, please. Like, I never want to be rude, but phone calls to me are like way too personal for what we're doing and what we're working on.
Yeah, and also as freelancers, like it's kind of different to being on salary because we're literally not getting paid for that time spent on the phone. You know, be doing our work that we get paid for to pay our bills. It's maybe mercenary, but that's how it is.
All right. Great. Oh my God, this was awesome. You guys did awesome. Well done. No, it's been a fantastic session and lots of interesting questions there's tons more questions and we'll hope to kind of get back to them. So thanks so much, Kelsey and Holly. You did an awesome job. Lots of interesting knowledge that was shared. So where can they find you if they want to kind of maybe not pitch you something, but when they kind of want to follow you or get in touch? Kelsey, where can they find you?
I am at KelseyOgletree.com. It's my name. And then all my social handles are on there as well, and my email.
Okay. We'll follow up, of course, with an email and share all those details as well. Holly, where can people find you or follow you?
Twitter is just at Holly. I stole it off somebody else. No, I didn't. I'm kidding. I also have a website which is just hollybrockwell.com. But I mean, it's a relatively unusual name, so usually if you Google it, you'll get me and lots of weird things about my life.
All right, great. Thanks so much. We'll send some Belgian treats your way for your participation. So, like, yeah, of course, we're always doing that. So, for the guests, so you'll get something in the mail in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, thanks so much for joining. And we'll, for the rest of the audience, thanks so much for joining. It was great that you were so active and lots of people decided to join. As always, we'll follow up with this recording and with some nice summary of all the questions and nice bits and pieces that were shared by our panelists. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great afternoon, morning, day, rest of the week. All right? Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.